Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Richa. So
Hi.
finally, we have a face to the phone calls that we're up to.
Yeah,
Right?
or LinkedIn messages. I think we were more
Yes, please.
connected on the LinkedIn messages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was very happy to know that someone in this domain is in the industry and they are becoming an ecosystem player as well. So taking that into account, I was introduced to you through one of my friends on LinkedIn. They said that
Okay.
please get to her and try to get her onto a platform and learn from her what you need to. Right. So in that endeavor, I just thought that this is the right opportunity to get into that. And you were so nice to give us an understanding of what you do a little bit, and also giving us an opportunity to interview you. So welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much, Arjun. No, happy to be here. I can totally understand, the how startups work, because I know that you just started out with this initiative. And since I also started on my own about 10 months back, so I know, it's important to kind of look at initiatives such as these and communicate stories on sustainability, not only, people who are creating impact, but also people who are ecosystem players. So great to be here. Thank you, Arjun.
Pleasure. So I'll just give you a short introduction about what is Impact X for us. So Impact X is a platform again to give impetus to stories from the impact domain. It is majorly concentrated on meaningful innovations, as you can see some of the interviews that I've done. And also we celebrate Bharat as that is one impetus that we need to give currently. And we have a lot of character in tier 3 and tier 4 towns specifically. And these startups are majorly, my insight has been that they are coming from places where there is a lot less noise and a lot more opportunity to innovate, right? So
Yeah.
we made this platform, we started writing a little bit, and then we started saying that maybe videos is a more inclusive way of answering the queries. It's not too much of wordy and medicinal kind of an approach. So we went into this approach, and it has been very helpful. So we at ImpactX just don't push your story online, but we also help after the interview. We keep on connecting you with the dots that are there in your ecosystem. So in the last 5 interviews, we've been able to connect some people to government agencies. We've been able to get value chain support for others. And I just wanted to learn from you the way you have contributed. It is the most humble way of getting into a very processed industry, which has been there for time and again. So let me introduce to the audience. She is Richa Pant, and she represents Harmony Inc. currently. And it's a ESG and CSR enabler in the industry. And she is also a platform. So she has a platform by the name of Travelog, which is, so she will give you details about it. So she will give you a little more about what is Harmony Inc. and how did it come about. So please give us a story of yours.
Thank you so much, Arjun. I started working in this domain good 17 years back, and initially started working with corporates and looking at, how they've been implementing CSR and sustainability. So largely managing those programs, but obviously in alignment with the not-for-profit sector also. So we used to work in partnerships. However, when, wherever I've worked, whichever industry, so I've been with industries such as manufacturing, like auto ancillary services, with pharmaceuticals, services as well, the telecom and financial services. I always felt that, there was a gap, there was a trust deficit which existed with the corporates and the not-for-profits. And why it existed was primarily because there was a perception that for the not-for-profit, there was a perception that corporates just want to do limited work around their area. They don't look at a broad mindset, and they have certain gaps in understanding that things cannot happen very quickly. It's a basically development sector takes time for create impact. So that's something they felt that the corporates were not able to understand, whereas companies felt that NGOs are mostly like a one-man show, and it runs largely, what founder says and what are his interests. And sometimes, I also heard the perception that they're not very professional in their opinion. So, having seen this and, struggle between the corporates and the not-for-profits, I felt that why not create a platform where, one can become a bridge between the impact solution seekers and impact providers. And when I'm talking about impact providers, while right now I did mention about not-for-profits, but we also work with startups and social enterprises. So the bridge basically ensures that the trust deficit which exists within the corporate sector and the development sector is minimized to the best possible extent. Rather, we create collaborative projects. Fortunately for us, what has happened and in fact, that was one major trigger where I started on my own, was the focus on the sustainability in the ESG space, which picked up over last 2 years. Having spent 17 years, I knew that sustainability was there always. I remember, in manufacturing, when I was working way back in Gurgaon, customers were asking companies as to what are certain green practices on your supply chain. Are you looking at zero waste policy? Are you looking at employee healthcare initiatives? All these questions were asked by customers then also, global customers. So companies were doing it, but they were always, these companies were always in pockets. There was no kind of a mass movement, which has become of late, thanks to COVID, I guess, which started on sustainability. So these things were happening. And so we said that, because the initiatives by the investors is coming across, the regulator in India, the SEBI mandated companies by top 1,000 by market cap to kind of start reporting. I thought this is the right time to now, kind of get into the sustainability space as well. So at Harmony Inc., we are, looking largely at becoming an ecosystem player. We are that bridge where we get these two sets together, the India Inc. And the not-for-profit social enterprises and startups, largely working on certain sustainable development goals. My personal sustainable development that I'm very keen on, going ahead with, and my work, if you see, is focused around are the 3 SDGs. One is SDG 5, which is women empowerment. My CSR work within companies have been on women empowerment and financial inclusions and their skill development. Right. And SDG 12 and 13, which is around climate change and responsible consumption production. Because I don't know, somehow I just to relate to especially responsible consumption production and waste management, somehow relate very closely to them because of personal right. I don't know, personal attachment of some sort. So while I did not work specifically during my sustainability piece, within corporates, but largely in Harmony, we are focusing on that. Okay. You rightly mentioned, Arjun, that, we do something like impact travelogues, very similar to what you're doing, but we meet largely with the social enterprises and startups working around these 2 SDGs, climate action and responsible consumption reduction, which includes waste management. Right. And we try and understand the story of the founder, how it all started, and what are the challenges that exist, how can we help them raise funds, and can they become partners to corporate India. Again, coming back to the the regulation that started by SEBI, one of the aspects which is very closely given by the regulator is that there should be sustainable sourcing. And when you talk about sustainable sourcing, these are the startups that can be part of that initiative by the corporates. It's taking time. It's not very easy for companies still to kind of accept that, even though regulator has mandated and investors last 2.5 years have been pushing companies to take up these initiatives. But yeah, I mean, that's the piece that we are trying to take it forward. So it's communication, it's taking projects, it's linking the two so that people don't have that kind of trust gaps and they work collaboratively towards achieving sustainable development goals. So yeah.
So when you say sustainable development goals, yes, it's a word. It is a very amazing word to follow. But obviously the execution on ground comes back to not only CSR, but also, as you mentioned, that you are moving into social enterprises and how these social enterprises can become a value chain support to the whole process of delivering for that execution. Now, give me an example of a social enterprise that you came across and you liked the innovations there, and what was the whole value chain for them that Harmony Inc. Achieved for them?
So, some of the social enterprises that we've seen are into upcycling and
Right.
recycling bit.
Right.
What we are trying to do is to get them to partner with corporates who are interested into it. So we get them to do dialogues. Okay, now
Right.
conversion happens when the corporate is convinced that they'll be able to give substantial number of business to it, and the
So when you
startup
say
also
corporate, sorry, if you say corporate integrate, getting them to the corporates and getting that conversation started, does it mean that you are moving the money through CSR side of
no, no,
funding?
no.
No.
It is completely business. So
Great.
that's a distinction. Again,
Mhm.
I'll come back to that.
Great.
Possibly I did not explain that. So when we are talking about, sustainable sourcing, we are
Right.
looking at how they can become their supply chain partners. This is
Beautiful.
not to do with CSR. CSR, when you do, and possibly in government in few years may allow that. Right now, CSR is not allowing the startups to get direct funds from the
Agreed.
corporates. It's basically
Agreed.
rooted through not-for-profits, and
Right.
then not-for-profits do the work. So CSR is right now more aligned to that. Obviously one can contribute towards certain incubators and accelerators run by the educational institution, and then contribute towards the startups who are working on sustainable development goals, but direct funding does not happen in CSR. But in ESG and sustainability space, because of this pandemic, which made sure that companies have to look at, because ESG and sustainability is much larger, and I actually prefer the word sustainability than ESG. ESG has become popular because investors are using it. Otherwise, sustainability is overall compassing and comprises
Agreed.
both of risks and innovation. So in the ESG space, when you're talking about connecting the startups and the social enterprises, mostly the startups, which are for-profit organizations, with the corporates, they become proper their supply chain partners. So just to give an example, if I don't want to name a corporate, but I was associated with a corporate, and we were looking at, getting our paper, which is extra bulk paper, recycled by a certain, startup, and then get the visiting cards of the top management made out of that recycled paper.
Right.
The recycled plant was fortunately located in a location in MP Jhansi area, where entire process of recycling, the tribal women were involved. So there was a social
Right.
angle also, and
Right.
we were getting the paper made, and the social enterprise were ensuring that the visiting cards of top management had that kind of a thing. So these are certain initiatives that works very well, because you are actually sourcing certain visiting cards instead of giving a random. Obviously, you have to pay a premium, so your company has to be conscious enough to be okay with the fact that you pay a premium, but then you are ensuring that your entire bulk is going in the right direction. It is getting recycled by women, so that we are getting economically, economic benefit out of it. It's good for environment, and then you're using it also. So these are some certain initiatives which I saw that works well. And here there was no CSR money which was going. It's a proper business money which was going in.
Right.
Similarly, there are corporates. In fact, I know that the Tatas have been looking at this aspect very closely and for a long number of years. It's right now, obviously, regulation has come, so more companies will be seeing it. But certain companies like Tatas and Godrej, they've been visionary companies. So
Right.
they've been using sustainable sourcing for quite some time. They source from rural communities, but here it's more of a not-for-profit angle. So they create, it's not a for-profit kind of a thing. Whatever profit they generate, they put it back into the development of those women, or the things like farmer producer companies or women-led enterprises. Just to
Right.
give you an example, Okhai, which is a traditional, it's a place where Tatas have invested, and these are women who make they weave the saris out of traditional prints, and which is
Right.
then sold to the not only the member companies but to general public at large also. And
Right.
whatever earning is there, it's again put back in the project. So they've been doing from more of a the welfare point of view as well, and it's a self-sustainable model. And yet doing that kind of impactful work. So there are various models that exist. We've been at Harmony Inc., we've been trying to push more for-profit model, because at least in my last few years, I saw that the management, if you want to really look at integrating ESG and sustainability bit, it will impact from a long-term perspective for their bottom line. So it needs to be embedded as part of that. Obviously, when you talk from a not-profit angle, immediately the management would feel that it should be parked under CSR, because
Right.
the law allows it. So yeah, so we work on both the parameters. When it comes to CSR, we work with not-for-profits and social enterprises. When it comes to sustainability, it's largely the startups, how the integration can happen with the India Inc. supply chain as supply chain partners, or for that matter, other value chain partners also. May not be direct supplier. It could be tier 3, tier 4 suppliers also. So that's something that we work on.
Right. So one thing I observed from one of the interviews I did last year, and we have an article on our channel where one MFI, which is an NBFC, uh, has a very old. I was never introduced to that kind of a business model. So once I interviewed him, I understood that these guys give loans to women in the family.
Yeah.
That is the best approach to avert risk. Because of the culture of handling money, they have grown leaps and bounds in the last 1 year. Just giving you an idea on the table where financial inclusion is also, the woman is now becoming the channel for the whole family to get financially independent.
That's the microfinance model. So microfinance, the
Right.
100% of the credit goes to women. If you see, Mohammed Yunus started this program, this entire model in Bangladesh. And from there, microfinance has worked well for the developing countries. And in India also, the NBFCs and the various small finance banks, they have MFI business. And MFI business, 100% customer is women, because of the fact that women will know how to manage finances. And in my previous organization also, we had very strong MFI business, at L&T Finance, and it's doing still very well. And what we did was we aligned CSR with that. And now you'll see a lot of other financial institutions are aligning that. Their CSR initiatives, especially, the financial institutions, the microfinance bit, or, even the insurance bit, it's aligned to this CSR, or rather CSR is aligned to that, because then only from a long-term perspective, it is sustainable.
Agreed. So
So what you saw was a good example. It's a business example. It's a complete business model towards access to finance for women, and through women, the community itself. So that's complete microfinance model.
Agreed. So I was thinking maybe you must be, though, because I am also kind of intrigued by this whole movement of MFIs and how they can actually add value in this new context, which is 2022. We have understood that MFIs are also basically, there are a lot of infra projects. There is a lot of patents that are coming up as well. So patent laws have now become so easy to achieve, and in India, patent law firms are so many now. In the last 6 months, actually, we've seen a spurt of law firms which are into patents. Now, looking at your major market where the solutions are going to, so the execution of every solution that you do. Is it a tier 3 or is it a village, or what is the mix in 2022? What do you see? What is 2022 for us and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, if you see the kind of crisis that the pandemic brought about, largely you saw a lot of migrants moving back to village because they lost jobs. And it was during that time that one could see that there was entire movement within the companies also to look at CSR initiatives that are more towards hinterland. While obviously there are challenges in the urban areas, which need their due solutions, and a lot of companies are working on that. But I see a movement shifting towards working with tier 3 and largely rural areas that need our support. And in fact, all of them in my previous assignments, except one in the Gurgaon, everywhere we had projects in the rural areas, whether it was healthcare, skill development, women empowerment, financial inclusion, because we know that, as corporates, we have to expand in those areas. So just to give an example, coming back to financial inclusion, and MFI model, it's the, in the rural areas that we were kind of doing our CSR program, because our business presence was there. Similarly, with the pharmaceutical that I was working with, fortunately, certain plants were located in the SEZ areas where they were tier 3 or almost rural areas. So we were working in those specific areas. So I see this, but those were obviously because of the plant location they were working. But I see greater involvement of companies in the hinterland areas, in the rural areas, largely, again, if you pick up thematic areas, we know for sure that education and healthcare has been two large areas where the companies have been focusing in their CSR work. But I also see livelihood generation becoming really important. So this would be another thematic area, and skill development, where companies would be channelizing their money, and they are doing that. If you I've been talking to larger corporate foundations. A majority of them try to access the tier 3 towns and rural areas in all these thematic works. Obviously, if you have plants, it works well, because then you also justify that I have a manufacturing facility and I cater to the community welfare of these areas. So when you report it to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, typical CSR report, you do mention that you look at rural development, and then along within rural development you do multiple thematic areas. So I see in 2022 onwards, it's already started 2020 onwards, because people saw the kind of crisis which emanated, and the kind of need which is there for the migrants. They should have jobs within their local area, so they're contributing a lot towards the hinterland. But I would not say that all of them are shifting. There are a few obviously who are focusing on the urban areas as well, because urban challenges are also there. So you need a few companies to contribute in CSR towards that as well. But yeah.
Right. So, looking at what your achievements are, what are the high moments and the low moments that have come across for you for the last 10 months that you've started Harmony Inc.?
Okay, so the high moments for a typical startup is when you get your first client. I think that's the, the biggest high moment, because when you start, so when you were working for, I was working back to back 17 years with different industry, and I left at extremely high point. The program that I was running with L&T Finance won 5 awards back to back because of the kind of replicable, scalable, and sustainable model it was. So when you leave that, you are suddenly feeling, I'm taking such a risk. You leave a high impact program that you've created across different corporates. You're leaving a well-paying job. The monthly, thing that comes towards your 31st or 1st, it's not going to come. So those are risks you're taking. But then how soon am I going to? That's a risk you're taking because you want to do something of your own and you want to create that kind of impact. And you saw that there's a gap there and you want to create a solution there. But then, when do you get your first client is always a, it's always a challenge. You keep trying. So my highest point till now, last 10 months has been when I got my first client, because that shows that the organization has belief in me as a person, so that's a reiteration of the fact of your personal brand. Till now, till the time you are with the corporate, you are running a company's brand. So you are head of X, this thing. When you are on your own, you are back to the ground. You start when you were, so I went back to the point when I started my job in 2004, just as a fresher. So obviously at a much higher age, but I think that was the highest point. And lows are, so I don't know. I mean, if in a journey such as this, there are various points of lows. I mean, you keep on pitching and you make the best effort. You try, and sometimes the client, prospective client, says that I'm going to be giving you the thing, and then it doesn't happen. So that's something which is low. But then I won't say that it's the lowest point or something, because these are some things that I decided that I knew that it will happen. Something which is sometimes bothers me now, and I keep discussing with my husband also, who's also an entrepreneur, that you're now on the other side. You're no more the head, right? So people, you get to really know who are the ones who are industry who will support you in these initiatives, and that's something, because 17 years when you're in industry, you have a good network in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, every city, all CSR heads and sustainability heads are there. So when you start off your own, obviously you reach out to them, for your projects. So one gets to know really that who are the people who will, how extent you will get a, project with them, or, how will they react, or how will they support. So that is something which you get to know, which is interesting, because I mean, because I won't say these are tough times, but it's a time that you're taking a risk, and you need to see which people are there with you when you are taking this initiative, or when you're starting up your own. So that's something, a realization. So it's a realization. I won't say it's a low point or something, but it's a realization that this is what happens.
So this naturally takes us to our, we do every interview, we ask one question. And the question in your interview has gone very naturally to the point where I ask you one simple question, which is how do you define resilience? So if you are looking at your own startup and how you built it and how you see the overall context that you operate in, how does resilience now build you so some people have told me that okay, resilience for me is to wake up every morning and keep doing things as per the last day's positives, the highs of yesterday. Then some people say that okay, there is a vision that I align to, right? Now, I know that resilience can be defined in the theme of the universal concepts of what resilience is. But for you, as you have seen, what has woken you up and kept you going?
I think belief in myself that I can do it. That's
Mhm.
something that's always there, because I think what you just need to do is you need to keep putting a lot of efforts, because when I started out, I knew that I can do it. Obviously it's a risk that one takes, but then there's a belief in fact that I know that I have the potential to make it. So I think that belief keeps you going, despite whatever lows which are there, or whatever realization is there, because um, you know your USPs. When you were so when we were with corporates, when I was with the corporate, it was always also the CSR, wherever I implemented, they also always started from a scratch. So you were an entrepreneur. I was always an entrepreneur within the company. So I know that how it is to start from a scratch. And when you're doing on your own, it's tougher, but I know that I can do it because I know how to connect the dots. I have the networks. I know the impact areas well. And you know how to do a pitch. Obviously there are many learning point things like hiring. So you become an HR manager of your own, you are a tech person of your own, you're doing a business development, everything on your own. But yeah, I think it's been a great journey, and what keeps me going is the belief that I know I can do it. So I think that's the highest thing which I feel that one should have, I feel. And I think it's
Amazing.
with me. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So I just wanted to ask you, what is your wish? So if you were to wish from the industry that you're in the context that you're in, what would you like to wish from the ecosystem that you're in? That is something, maybe that's like your moonshot, that something makes you achieve that moonshot. So what is that wish for you?
I think what my wish would be that not always go with what investors are asking. What is it that the company really is looking at internally? When it comes to
Mhm.
sustainability, they should be looking from that angle. So it should not be driven by compliances and investors ask. It should be
True.
coming from within, and the struggle that sustainability team faces, when they are trying to drive projects, that should not be there with them. So management themselves should be aware. So my wish is that they should be knowing about various sustainability initiatives that they need to take, because unless and until they don't do it, they will not survive. So it's not something which is good to do or because people are asking to do. It's something which they need to do, otherwise they will not survive themselves. So that's my wish, that you need to understand that your business, even if you're part of emerging market and you're thinking that okay fine, I'll do it when my profits are good. No, it's not going to be there. I mean, you will not be earning profits if your climate is failing, or if the
True.
community, there's so
True.
many inequities in the community, because ultimately it will impact business. So the fact that you realize that your business will not be able to sustain unless you until do it, is something that the board and the top management should realize ASAP. It should be just there within. It should not be left to sustainability teams. It should not be left to investor pushing. It should not be left to a SEBI asking to do it. It should come within.
So building on
And
your
this is not
thoughts
something which is
only.
heart driven. It's brain driven. It's logical. I mean,
Agreed.
corporates talk about
Totally
logic,
agree.
right? So it's logical to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing, it's logical in the current context. As you can see, this summer has been a very big eye opener. As a full environment question that we can raise today, but nobody is speaking too much. But
Well, I was in Zurich and Europe like 1.5 months, and it was under heat wave. So we had like I mean, entire my winter clothes were just kept in the bag, and I couldn't utilize it. So there was like it was like 36, 37 in Zurich. It was
oh
very
my
hot.
God.
Spain, it touched 43. If you see, the entire from early June till entire June, month of June was bad in Europe, and it's been happening again and again. So you're right. I mean, climate is impacting across continents.
That's just one thought in there that we are taking the context of climate. But on top of it, everything right now needs to come back to the right thinking to move in the right direction. Otherwise, you are not valuable. The value creation will be impinged upon by a lot of context players if you are not in the right meaningful space. I think that is where the effect of the context can also be. So I agree with you 110%. Now, majorly, see, we are also in the same domain as a little bit on, we can have some contributions to your exercise as well. So keep connecting with us, and we are also creating a startup ecosystem majorly. We are majorly concentrating on meaningful innovations. So these come from social enterprises, startups, innovators who have come back and trying to solve for Bharat. Some of them I have reached out to, and they are, some of them agree to do an interview. Some of them are not available at the moment, but yes, we have met them personally. So we are always up for helping them in the ecosystem side. So whenever your business or context needs something from the startup social enterprise discovery side, do reach out to us also. We'll be very open, and there will
Sure,
be no
sure.
questions asked. It will always be a give kind of a way of giving you. So it was a pleasure talking to you.
Same here, Arjun.
Richa. It was a very nice, happy morning for Sunday. And we wish you all the best. And we are there to support you in whatever you need in your journey.
Thank you so much, Arjun, for having me. It was great. This conversation was, I really enjoyed. It's something that I did, on my, I mean, I typically do this with, with the social enterprise and startup system, but sharing my story is something which is unique. So yeah, thank you so much.
So I'll ask my audience to like and subscribe, and we will be spreading your story across our ecosystem as well, Richa. Thank you.
All right, Arjun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.